This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The holidays are over, the decorations are down, and suddenly everything feels a little empty. It's normal to feel the winter blues after the holiday excitement. January, February, and March are by far my least favorite months of the year. It's cold and dark, and I have to get some extra vitamin D on board. I also need to keep my regular scheduled appointments with my therapist. So if you're feeling that post-holiday funk, I definitely suggest you checking out BetterHelp because maybe it's time to talk. You might also be one of those people like me who makes New Year's resolutions and you get super motivated. So maybe you need someone behind you to hold you accountable and come up with a plan to meet your goals. BetterHelp is super convenient, totally online. You have a therapist right at your fingertips whenever you need them. So head over to betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 for 10% off your first month.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
This podcast is an unscripted, unedited conversation about true crime. We take the cases very seriously, but I don't take myself seriously at all, and neither should you. Welcome to Wife of Crime.
So, Russ, we haven't done a mafia case in a really long time, but our people keep asking for it. When it comes to the death of Jimmy Hoffa, there are a lot of people who have confessed to this crime. It's actually pretty crazy. And one of those people was one of his closest friends. Can you believe that? So today I'm telling you about a mafia hitman with a very interesting story. This is the case of Frank, the Irishman, Sheeran. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wife of Crime, a true crime podcast where I tell my husband, Russ, true crime cases and he reacts to them.
What's up, folks? It's your boy Russ, a.k.a. styling and profiling on them.
That's funny. Someone commented the other day, hashtag style and profiling. I think they shared something with you in it, which is so funny.
Yeah, I would love to take credit for that, but I got that from my one of my childhood heroes, even my adulthood heroes, Walt Clyde Frazier.
You did, yeah. He always says that, style and profiling. Oh my God, so we got really bad news last week. We shared it on our socials.
What was that?
The show Maury got canceled after 30 years.
Yo, that's crazy. Let me do a cheers for Maury. Cheers to all the kids you helped get on child support.
Oh.
And if I ever get a show and that cameraman needs a job, that cameraman is getting hired. That man is fast.
Yeah.
He will chase anyone down. And when guys do backflips after not being the father or cartwheels, he always keeps them in frame.
He does. That's so true. That's so true. But a lot of people messaged us and they said, now is the time, Russ, to capitalize on the DNA shop.
I know, but then that reminds me of like that movie you were just watching, the lady that like was setting up some DNA shop in Walgreens or something and it wasn't ready.
Oh, Theranos. No, listen, she wasn't setting up a DNA shop. This idiot, her name is Elizabeth Holmes. And if you know anything about true crime, which clearly you don't, she's a giant scam artist. She made everyone think she was super smart. She got all these people to invest their money in this company that the technology didn't even exist.
I know, but I don't even know if a DNA technology exists. It's 24 hours. But how long does it have to marinate in a Petri dish or something? Like speed up the process.
That's true. I don't know. I don't know either. We'd have to investigate that.
So I have something I wanted to bring up. It's not really true crime related, but it's health related. I needed to make a PSA for all the ladies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so did you hear about the Brazilian singer that was hospitalized after holding in her farts around her boyfriend?
No.
She was hospitalized. She was in the hospital, and there was 2 people that this happened to in the past week.
Really?
Yeah. So I do have some funny fart stories, but Jess would be really upset.
Don't tell a fart story about me.
So when we first went to get Biggie,
No, you already told this story.
well, there's probably some new people then.
That's true.
The first thing she did when she saw Biggie, she said, "Oh, now I could blame my farts on him."
Yeah, you told that in a past episode.
And Jess holds in her farts all the time. This is why her stomach probably always hurts, because whenever like we're in separate rooms and like I'm playing Call of Duty in the living room and Jess is in the bedroom probably watching Sex in the City for the 100th time. I go into the room real quick, and then she looks all nervous. And she's like, "Oh, don't come too close." She waits until she's alone to let him go.
Listen, but I mean, look, I'm not going to just like rip ass right in front of you. Like, at least I'm giving you the respect, unlike you. I give you the respect to do it in a different room.
Yeah, but I don't want my stomach to hurt. I know if like one day I came home early from work unexpected, this whole house would smell like farts. You're probably in here vacuuming and farting all day.
That's not true. I fart in front of you. Don't act like I don't ever.
But it's a mistake, and then you cover your face.
I don't know why. You know, some people aren't embarrassed about farts. I'm not like embarrassed necessarily, but I mean, I guess a little bit. I just don't want you to look at me as like unattractive.
There's been a couple times where I farted while we were recording, and I was like, I wonder if the mic could hear that.
I've heard you fart while we were recording, and I just let it go. Like, I didn't address it.
I would have mentioned it. I don't want my stomach hurting. I don't care.
It's true. Better out than in. That is true. You're an idiot. I can't believe you told the whole world.
I have another fart story.
No. Don't tell any more.
I'll save that for another show.
Okay. Well, we have some new patrons. We covered the Tinder Swindler on March True Crime and Chill. So if you're interested in hearing our coverage of that documentary, head on over to Patreon and sign up. We actually argued halfway, pretty much the entire episode. We debated the entire thing. But there's a lot of people who think like me and a lot of people who think like Russ, and we really brought them together in our Patreon. So we have a really cool crew over there, and you have the patron shout outs, so go ahead and do it.
There's probably like 25 episodes over there now, all kind of bonus content and stuff. And here are the patrons of this week that joined. So it's Jasmine, Brianna, Elizabeth, Gwyneth, Erica, Cameron, Brianna, Rose, Donna, Nicole, Tina, Katie, Candy, Caitlin, Ashley, Megan, Kimberlia.
No, that's Kimberly. Kimberly.
Why is there Kimberly?
Kimberly.
That's like a remix. All right. Anita, Caitlin, Liz, Ashley, Robin, Lucretia, Allison, Mary, Chance Love, Rose, and another Kimberly. So,
yeah.
Cheers to all of you. Thank you very much for joining.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.
Appreciate your support. Keep rocking with us.
Yes, we really appreciate all the people in Patreon and all the people who just listen every week, because every time you listen and tell somebody, we're going to grow. And if you ever give us a review, if you love us and you've been listening for a long time, give us a review. Hopefully it's 5 stars.
No, you only review if you give 5 stars.
That's true.
That'd be silly to give any less.
That's true.
Because it doesn't hurt your finger to like slide it a little more to the right and hit 5 stars. So speaking of reviews, I have this week's review of the week. If you leave us a funny review, there's a good chance I'll read it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you leave us a bad review, I'll probably look at what you look like on Instagram and make fun of your children. But so this week's review of the week is, you guys are the best. 5 stars. It says 5+++ stars. Jess, I too am true crime obsessed. My husband thinks I'm trying to off him, but I keep reminding him there's no way to get away with it. I'm also a nurse, 28 in home care, 18 of those in hospice care.
Aww.
Russ, I've never seen levitation, but I've had some experiences that are quite interesting. I'd love to hear your explanation. I plan on becoming a patron soon because I truly enjoy listening to you. Chris and CT.
Wow. Well, I bet in hospice care, she does have some stories. I mean, that's end of life. I bet she has a lot of crazy stories.
Well, Chris, we do those listener stories. Send us an email of your story at, what is it?
wifeofcrimepod@gmail.com. Yes, we're going to be doing a listener episode probably this week, so send it over and I'll tell Russ your story and we'll see what he thinks.
Yeah, and if you think you saw stuff about like floating and
ghosts,
paranormal stuff, I'm not going to believe it. I'll have like a rational explanation for you. Like I'll profile it so you can stop feeling crazy.
No. We all know he doesn't think that any of that is real, and I do, so I will have your back 100%.
Well, all of us who believe and don't believe, like I've always said, we all have one thing in common.
What?
None of us have seen a ghost.
People have seen ghosts. I can't wait for the next listener story episode. I cannot wait because I have some good stories that you're not going to be able to explain. You're not. And they're from our listeners who are listening right now, and they have seen things.
We've been trying to do a listener story, but life's busy. And then Jess is a procrastinator. She waits till the last minute on Sunday before I have to like go to sleep for work. She's like, want to record a listener episode?
Shut up.
I was
We're
like,
going to do it this week.
We had all day, Jess. We spent all day eating Chinese food, riding our scooters around and drinking beer. Like,
that's true. But we are going to do it this week, so you guys look out for that. Okay, so we've been getting a lot of requests to do another mafia episode. Surprisingly, we've only done 2 before this. In 2020, we covered Richard the Iceman Kuklinski, which was a crazy story. He was insane. Do you remember his story?
Yeah, he was a hitman.
Yeah, hitman.
But he was like a child molester too.
No, he wasn't.
I think so.
He was? I don't remember. But I know he was a hitman. He killed like 200 people. He said he was a serial killer.
You should pay better attention to the podcast.
Then in early 2021, we covered Donnie Brasco, which was another really popular episode. And personally, still one of my favorites that we've actually ever done. I have to say it's literally one of my faves.
I'm going to have to listen to that again. I know what it's about because I've watched the movie. Isn't that the one with Johnny Depp?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We really need to do more of these, honestly, because I love these stories. You love these stories. Our listeners love these stories. And we're in the Bronx. So, like, why not?
Forget about it.
Exactly. So we have like close connections to this world because we're in the Bronx and we know some people who are connected to this world. So originally my plan was to do this episode on the mysterious or not so mysterious death of former Teamster president Jimmy Hoffa. But
who founded the union I work for.
He did, because you're
There's a little insight of where I currently work, I guess.
Exactly. But as I was researching his life and death, of course, it took me down this rabbit hole as usual. And, we have this very close friend named Nick, and his mom is a pretty big actress. She recently did an amazing job playing Fezco's grandmother in the season 2 opener of Euphoria. So if you guys have ever watched Euphoria, watch the season 2 opener. That's our friend Nick's mom, and she's a G.
Catherine Narducci.
Yes, Catherine Narducci.
If they don't give her a spinoff of that character for a show, and I'm not just saying that because, like, I'm friends with her son, but, like, that character was gangster.
She was.
And I didn't watch the show at all. I just watched that scene, and she was, like, a gangster granny.
She was. Like, you didn't even watch the series at all. Russ had no idea what the series was about. He just watched the first 10 minutes that she was in the season 2 opener, and she was such a G. And she played that part so well. But Catherine, Nick's mom, has played in a few famous mafia films and TV shows like A Bronx Tale, The Sopranos, and more recently a movie called The Irishman, which was directed by the amazing Martin Scorsese, and it premiered on Netflix in 2019. So the movie The Irishman is actually based on a book. Did you know this? Written by a guy named Charles Brandt.
I feel like every movie's based on a book.
Well, the book that this movie was based on is called I Heard You Paint Houses, which is mafia lingo for being a hitman, killing people.
How do you know if someone read the book to the movie you're watching with them?
Because they'll always tell you.
Yeah, it's so annoying. I've said that joke before, but it's so annoying. They're like, that didn't happen in the book. Shut up. You're ruining the movie, dummy. I didn't read the book because I didn't want to ruin the movie.
That's true. People do that. I do that. I think I've done that to you. I'm like, it didn't happen in the book like that.
You do a lot of annoying stuff to me and it never stops.
Shut up. So anyway, the book is called I Heard You Paint Houses. And that's mafia lingo for being a hitman, because when you kill someone, the blood splatters on the wall. And that's why they say, I heard you paint houses. And that means, do you kill people?
Oh, that's a gangster way to say it.
Exactly. So it was written in 2004 when Charles formed a friendship-ish, I'll say, with a former mafia hitman named Frank the Irishman Sheeran. Little did he know that through this friendship, he would not only learn about this very interesting life of this mob hitman, but also the interworkings of the mafia in Philadelphia and upstate New York, which was actually ran by a boss named Russell Buffalino. He has your name. Frank would eventually confess to the murder of the Teamster president, Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah, but he's not the only one. There's a lot of theories going on around about Jimmy Hoffa, and they also do say he's under where the Giants play. I think it's MetLife Stadium.
Yes, they do say that, and there are a lot of people who've confessed, and there are a lot of theories. So
I guarantee I know someone that has some really good theories from people that were involved, probably, but I won't ask because the less you know, the better.
Yeah, it's true.
So keep me out of it because, like Rashid said, that's no me, papi. I live on the 5th floor.
That's true.
Best comedy skit ever. Go check out Rashid Def Comedy Jam on YouTube.
Yeah, it is really the best. It's hilarious. But since his confession and the publication of the book, like you just said, many people have called his confession into question or flat out said it's not true. And these are people who are big-time ex-mobsters, like Sammy the Bull Gravano. But
he's a little fishy now. He's a bit of an attention whore.
He is. And the other one that's a big attention whore is Michael Franzese.
Yeah. Oh, I hate Michael Franzese. See, I mess with Sammy because he's like straight up why he told Michael Franzese. Now he's like some church dude.
Yeah, he's a motivational speaker.
Yo, get out of here. And now he's trying to profit off Jesus and stuff.
Yeah, it's a bit much. Well, both of them say that the Irishman, Frank, did not do this. So I'm going to tell you all about Frank Sheeran, how he became incredibly close to Russell Buffalino, and the controversy surrounding the death of Jimmy Hoffa. And maybe the profiler can decide if he thinks Frank painted this house.
Who are you trying to talk like? I don't talk like that.
No, I'm just trying to talk like a New Yorker. Are you ready?
Yeah. This beer I'm drinking right now is really good. Neon Beer Hug IPA. Jeez Louise. It's delicious. And they didn't pay me. That's just me sharing something I like with you guys. Hit them up and say, Russ the Profiler sent you. Send them free beer.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So Frank was born October 25th, 1920, in a small town right outside of Philly called Darby, Pennsylvania. So his father was Irish and his mother was Swedish. Frank had a really tough childhood. So like being born in 1920 means he was a preteen and teenager during the Great Depression.
I bet in 1920 they didn't have that soft-ass term preteen.
Well, whatever.
You know what that is? That's like a church thing.
No, it's not.
Everyone
says preteen.
You're a preteen before you can do this.
Whatever. Well, he was a teenager during the Great Depression.
You can say he was a kid. He was young.
Yeah, he was a teenager during the Great Depression. And being the son of an Irish immigrant meant a lot of discrimination and poverty. It was like a nonstop struggle to survive. His father was a bit of an alcoholic, and as Frank grew up, he was actually a really big kid. Like, he ended up being a huge guy. So when he was a teenager, he was pretty big. So his father would set up bets on Frank fighting other kids to win beer money. And that actually reminded me of you, because you said when you were a kid, older dudes in the hood would bet on fights between you and kids your age.
I didn't find that out until I got older, when I first moved to my neighborhood.
Wow.
That they would bet on me. And they would I remember this kid, Tareen. Me and Tareen used to fight every day. And I never knew why we always fought every day.
And you didn't even hate him?
Not really. We still played the next day.
But you would just get into a fight?
Yeah, and I guess they would instigate it. And, I was like the only white kid pretty much in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And the dudes were like, I got my money on him, from what I heard. And I would hang out. They weren't much older than me. They were probably 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
And then I'd see them in a bar in my 20s. And they told me the story that they used to say, he's a little bad motherfucker.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Well, that reminded me of you when you told me that.
But I wasn't even a fighter like that as I got older. That's when I was 7, 8.
Really?
I was a little kid.
Wow. Well, needless to say, Frank actually grew up to be a pretty tough young man because his father would put bets on him to fight other kids, and he ended up fighting a lot as a teenager.
I wonder if that was one of those situations where you better whoop him or I'm gonna whoop you.
Maybe, yeah. So in order to escape poverty and hardship, Frank decided to enlist in the army in 1941, and he was immediately sent to Italy, and he fought in World War II. But Frank was in the Thunderbird Division under General Patton, and they had specific instructions not to take any prisoners. So Frank ended up killing a lot of POWs.
So you lose the sensitivity for life, or what's the right word?
You're desensitized.
You're desensitized, yeah. Instead of saying lose sensitivity.
Yeah, desensitized.
That was dumb.
No, it's not. So he ended up spending 411 days straight in combat, which is actually really unheard of. I mean, that is a lot of days straight. Even now, they give guys and women who are in combat breaks. They don't let you stay there for that long, which really affected his mental health. Finally, he was discharged in 1945. He came back to the U.S.
Was he still young?
Yeah, he was young at the time.
In 20s, probably?
He was in his 20s, yeah. He came back to the U.S. With more POW murders than he could count and a lot of PTSD. So Frank was a strict Irish Catholic, and he actually found a lot of solace at Mass, which he attended 2 to 3 times a week because he was so strict. While at church, he met his wife, who was also Irish. They got married and had 3 daughters, and Frank got a job working as a truck driver.
The baddest dudes always have daughters.
Yeah, that is true.
All the dudes I know that were crazy, they all have daughters.
It's like the powers that be, God, the universe, whatever you believe in, wants to soften you up, wants to show you the softer side of life. So they give you girls, I feel like. Because in order to be a dad of girls, especially multiple girls, you end up softening up. Especially when those little cute girls are like, Daddy, I love you. You can't help but soften up.
And then you just end up broke working overtime all day.
Oh. Well, Frank got a job working as a truck driver.
Working overtime, broke.
He was a little broke. So through this job, he met a bunch of Italian truck drivers who were doing work for the mob. They were doing drug runs, loan shark money collectors, things like that. So Frank saw this as a side hustle opportunity to make some extra cash because he had 3 daughters and a wife, and he was probably a little broke.
That was basically his overtime. Who profiled this?
Yeah, you did. So I'm sure he realized it was a dangerous situation, but sometimes when you come from nothing and you've struggled your entire life for money, it can be really tempting when you have this money right in front of you that you just do a quick job for, and, there you go.
Yeah, a lot of people have been in that situation, and I feel like most of us have taken these little risks, where it's not that illegal, but if I got caught, I'd get in trouble, but I'm probably not going to get caught. Yeah.
I think a lot of people have done something like that.
Well, maybe just the people that are from where I'm from.
Yeah, maybe. Because I've
just
never
take this
done
here, do this.
Mm-hmm.
What's the worst that could happen? They ain't going to catch me. It's my first offense. You get off on your first offense. I don't have any felonies yet.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure that's what he was thinking. It's a small risk for a lot of money, so I'll just try it. But a really funny detail about Frank is that before he started doing these jobs for the mob, in order to make extra money, he was actually a ballroom dance instructor.
Twinkle toes over
He
here.
was light on his feet, and he loved to go dancing. So that's just a fun fact about him that I found really funny.
Yeah, Jess wishes I would go dancing.
I do. I could teach you to dance. No, he doesn't. He just stands there drinking his beer while I grind on him. That's really all that happens.
like we're teenagers over here.
Yeah. So there was a moment, however, that kind of seemed like fate. Frank would meet the man that would end up defining the rest of Frank's life. Okay. So he was driving for this grocery chain called Food Fair as a delivery truck driver. And he was all the way up in Syracuse, New York at a truck stop, and his truck wouldn't start. So he was up there messing around under the hood, and this little short Italian guy walks up to him with a toolbox and asks him if he needs some help. Frank says sure. The man, looks under the hood, works on the truck for a little bit, and actually gets the truck started. The two men shook hands. And now I want you to picture this, like this little Italian guy, he's 5'6", okay? Frank at this point is 6'4", and he weighs about 265 pounds. So they're like really different looking people.
Yeah.
But the two men were very intrigued by one another. Frank thought, wow, this is a really nice guy. He just came, helped me, got my truck started. What a nice guy. And the Italian man was really impressed by how tough, because Frank was pretty tough. He looked kind of rough around the edges. So he was really impressed by how tough and big Frank was.
Yeah, no, you could be impressed by how big someone is, but unless you've seen someone in a situation, you don't know if they're tough.
That's true, but he has this image of being tough. He's like a working man. He's big. He kind of gave off that vibe.
Yeah.
So the men introduced themselves, and the Italian guy said, "Hi, my name's Russell." And he asked Frank.
Good name.
He asked Frank where he lives. And through their conversation, Russell learns that Frank hangs out in the same bars and social clubs that the Italian truck drivers hang out in Philly. The two men smiled, shook hands, and they parted ways. But little did Frank know that this chance meeting would actually change the trajectory of his life. A couple weeks later, Russell is in Philly, and he looks Frank up. And he invites him to come have dinner with him at a restaurant. So here, Frank walks into this restaurant. He has no idea who Russell is. He just knows this little short Italian guy that helped get my truck started. But he will very quickly find out that Russell is Russell Bufalino, the mob boss of the Bufalino crime family.
Oh, he was the boss, and he helped a random dude get
boss.
His truck started.
So at this point,
that's pretty cool, because a lot of times dudes like that don't really do work.
Yeah.
They got a guy. Like, hey, I'll get my guy over here to fix it for you.
So at this time, when he first met Frank, he's actually the underboss. He's the guy below the boss. But eventually he will become the boss. So he found out once he walked in the restaurant and kind of looked around and realized what was going on, that this is Russell Bufalino, and he controlled northeastern Pennsylvania and all of upstate New York. That was his territory.
I wonder how he knew, because that was definitely the time before Adidas tracksuits. So, what were they wearing?
Oh, this was the 40s. At this point, this is the 40s and 50s. They're wearing suits. They're dapper as hell. Men back then, they wore tailored suits.
They wore hats.
They wore hats, like fedoras. They were so dapper back then.
And now only corns wear fedoras, or Bruno Mars.
Or Bruno Mars. You don't think Bruno Mars is a corn for that? I don't think fedoras are a corn thing to wear.
That's because you wear fedoras.
I love fedoras.
Yeah, well, You
just called me a corn. I love fedoras.
Well, maybe they look good on you, but most men that wear fedoras, you look like you're trying too hard.
I don't know. I don't think it looks bad, but that's just me.
Well, maybe I don't wear a fedora because my head is big.
Maybe. You've never seen yourself in a fedora. Maybe if you wore one, if your head wasn't so big, you could wear one and then you'd like the way it looked.
Well, they fit me like yarmulkes.
I just have an image of that, like giant head, like Jimmy Neutron with this tiny little fedora.
My head's not that big. I'm obviously exaggerating because that's what I do, but
that was funny. You guys already know, because we have been talking about them for a while now. Via Hemp is by far one of our favorite sponsors we've ever had, okay? We use their products all the time. Maybe you're a little like me. You're a little anxious. You have a hard time settling down. You're kind of wound up a lot. If that's you, Via Hemp products are for you. Check out their website. You will find something that speaks to you. Maybe you're like Russ. You have a hard time sleeping because you have bad nerve pain or chronic pain. Then Via Hemp is for you because their gummies will help you get some quality sleep. Maybe you're looking to have a really good time. Maybe you just really like edibles. You want to laugh. You want to get the munchies. You want to watch a movie and have a really strong belly laugh. Then Via Hemp products are for you, okay? They're literally for everybody. So head over to viahemp.com, promo code wifeofcrime1 to get 15% off your first order. That's VIIAHEMP.com, wifeofcrime1 for 15% off your first order. Last year, Save More Money was the most popular New Year's resolution in America. Clearly, a lot of us feel like our money is slipping through our fingers. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not the best saver, and I don't know much about investing until I started saving and investing with Acorns. Turns out you don't have to be an expert at all because Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that fits you and your money goals. And I always thought that when people say, ooh, I invest in stocks, that they had a ton of money or something. Well, you don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you invest with the spare money you've got right now. You can literally start with $5. And you know you guys are spending that at Starbucks on these fancy lattes. So skip the coffee and invest with Acorns. You don't even need a ton of time. Like you can just sign up and start investing within 5 minutes. Head over to acorns.com/wifeofcrime or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. That's acorns.com/wifeofcrime. So anyway, he realizes, all right, so this guy's really important. And he runs northeastern Pennsylvania, all of upstate New York. So he becomes friends with Russell and they start hanging out pretty much on the regular. Frank was still doing work for the mob through his truck driving for some time, and it was going pretty well. He was actually making really good money on the side doing these drug runs and stuff. But one situation happened that got him way over his head and forced him into a situation where he needed to kill or be killed. And this was like the beginning of his hitman life.
And he's okay with, well, he's desensitized to killing. It's not a big deal to him because he's killed... Might have been 100 people. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
He probably killed so many that he doesn't know.
He doesn't know. Yeah. So there was a gangster named Whispers DeTulio. And his name was actually Whispers, which I always find so funny that the mob does these nicknames. Like they make, like we talked about Jimmy Two Soups in our old episode. And
yeah. And I got this neighbor over here that I call Whispers because he's like a big fat dude and he's always whispering. I'm like, well, and he's actually selling his condo. I'm like, fucking Whispers over here selling his condo.
You do call him Whispers. That's so funny.
But you know what's crazy?
What?
We don't even know if he listens because we got another neighbor here that found our podcast. I'm like, oh, shit.
A couple neighbors listen, so you better be careful.
Shout out to you, Whispers. Glad you're moving.
So, anyway, his name was Whispers, and... the reason they called him Whispers was because he had the worst smelling breath of all time. Like severe halitosis. So in order to not like offend people with his breath, he would whisper to everybody to not open his mouth wide.
Respect, man. That reminds me of the story I said earlier, like the girl holding her farts in.
Yeah.
Let that breath out, bro.
So no, he would not. And they called him Whispers because he whispered all the time.
He must have had a rotten tooth.
He must have. I don't know.
That reminds me of an episode of Flavor Flav where Flavor Flav had one of these girls on there and her breath always stunk so bad. And he sent her to the dentist.
And she had a rotten tooth.
She had a rotten tooth. Yo, respect for Flavor Flav fixing these girls up, bro. That's how we do from the Bronx.
Oh, God.
I fixed Jess up.
No, you didn't. I was good. Don't even.
She just like snapped her fingers, rolled her head.
All right, so let me go on with the story. So, anyway, Whispers wants to hire Frank to do a job for him.
He said, hey, I got a job for you.
Exactly. He talked like this. So he says to him, I gave a bunch of money to this linen service in South Philly, but there was another linen service that's competing with them, so they're not making enough money to pay me back. So I want you to go and burn down this competing dry cleaning business. Burn it to the ground so there's no more competition. The linen service that I invested in can now make a lot of money, and I can get my money back. He tells Frank, I'll pay you $10,000.
Bro.
This is the 50s.
That's like probably like
a lot of money.
500,000 now.
So he says, I'll give you $2,000 now and $8,000 when the job is done. So Frank took the job. He spent a couple days.
Give me 500,000. I'll burn a business down, boy. Right now, hit me up.
Well, Frank starts casing the place for a couple days. But since he's huge and like very inconspicuous, and not very inconspicuous, the people working in the linen service told the Philly mob that was actually run by a guy named Angelo Bruno. They told him, yo, there's this big guy like riding around watching us. He's been circling the block. He's been walking by, looking in the business. This is weird.
I guess he ain't so light on his feet. He could have been tiptoeing around that place.
He could have been, but...
Twinkle Toes ain't got it.
So Angelo called Frank in because since he had been hanging out with Russell, all these bosses know him now, right? So Angelo said, Frank, what are you doing? And Frank explains he was hired by Whispers to burn the place down. Angelo says, you know who owns that linen service? And Frank says, no. And he goes, I do. So Frank apologized and was super embarrassed at this point.
Wait, who approached him?
The boss of the Philly mob.
Oh, I got lost.
Yeah.
I thought I heard you fart, and then I laughed a little.
I did not fart.
I swear, I was like, did she just fart? Because I gave this PSA for women stop holding it in.
I did not fart.
Okay.
So
the boss of the Philly...
Let me tell you. So Angelo Bruno was the boss of the Philly mob. Okay. And he called Frank in and he tells Frank, do you know who owns this linen service that you're trying to burn down? And Frank says, no. And he says, I do. So of course, Frank apologized. He was super embarrassed. And at this point, he's scared. He says, should I give Whispers his $2,000 back? And Angelo says, no, he won't be needing it. In order to get out of this, you have to go take care of Whispers. So Frank calls him and asks...
No, he's double-crossing.
No, he's going to kill Whispers because Whispers was about to put him in a terrible situation with the Philadelphia mafia. He was about to burn down the linen service owned by a big boss in Philadelphia.
He's lucky that the Philly dude didn't kill him.
He's lucky because he knows that Frank is friends with Russell. And Russell runs northeastern Pennsylvania and all of upstate New York. And he's the boss too. So it's now all the bosses know that he's cool with Russell. So they didn't want to, hurt him. But they said, now you got to kill Whispers. Because if you would have burnt down my linen service, Whispers would have threw you under the bus.
This is why you can't trust low talkers. Never trust someone that talks low. I already knew.
Or close talkers.
And I always take a deliberate step back, and then close talkers will step towards you.
They will, yeah.
Maybe they have bad hearing.
Maybe. I have bad hearing, but I'm not a close talker. I'll never understand close talkers. If you're a close talker, try to step back.
If I'm like drinking, I'll be like, why are you so close?
Yeah.
I like just putting people on the spot.
It's true. You love putting people on the spot.
Or you should just like kiss them on the forehead if they're that close.
That would be so weird. So Frank calls and asks for a meeting late at night with Whispers. And they meet in this alley, and he shoots him twice in the head. So this was a big turning point for Frank because although he wasn't made, he realized he needed to stick really close with Russell because he realized that, there's a lot of people out here that are going to do some shady shit. So as long as I just stick with Russell and do whatever Russell tells me to do.
And that's the guy that fixed his truck.
Yes.
All right, I'm back on track.
Yeah. As long as I just stick with him, I'll be good because he's the boss. If I'm just his guy, I won't be getting myself
That's
in trouble.
right. Russell is the boss. Stick by him and do what he says, and you won't get in trouble.
I could have wrote in my script that you were going to say that at that point. Honestly, I knew you were going to say that. So he also realized that the mob is huge.
Well, you also didn't say, vote for us, he's for us.
I didn't. So he realized the mob is huge. There are multiple families. And the mob is crazy. Like, they have their own government, their own code of conduct. It's actually really fascinating. They have their own rules to adhere to. And if you don't follow their code, you're going to get got. So Frank is realizing all of this now. He didn't know how the mob all worked and everything.
Can you give me a definition of gonna get got?
You get got means you're going to die. You're going to get in trouble. You're going to get shot. You're going to get yourself in a bad situation.
Okay, because
You're going to get manipulated. You're going to get...
I know what you meant, but
anything like that.
I don't say that.
Whatever. I say it. So as a result of his close friendship with Russell Bufalino, Frank becomes a really popular guy. And he's still working as a truck driver at this point. But through his relationship with Russell and the fact that he's now a Teamster, Frank is now a Teamster working as a truck driver, he gets introduced to Jimmy Hoffa through Russell.
This is my lineage.
Yeah. So for everyone who doesn't know who Jimmy Hoffa was, he was the president of the International Brotherhood of the Teamsters, which is still to this day probably the strongest union in our country.
Hell yeah.
Jimmy Hoffa started as a union activist when he was only 14 years old. He worked for a grocery chain, and he didn't like the way that people were treated, so he started being an activist. He rose to power in the union over the next 20 years, and he became the youngest vice president of the union in 1952.
Yo, respect to him. You know why? Because unions are very important.
They are.
For living wages. Like, the reason I say I don't like my job is because it has nothing to do with, like, it's good for a job.
Yeah, you just don't like working.
Like, I have a really good job.
Yeah.
But I rather hang out at home with Biggie and, you know, play video games with my friends and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course.
But, like, unions are very important. And if you're in a union, stick by that if it's a good union.
It's true.
Good unions will get you living wages. And that's my only political view. Like, good unions are the shit.
And they'll get you living wages. They'll take care of you. They'll give you good pensions. I mean, unions are important. I'm a big union fan.
Well, you know what sucks now? Well, now we're getting all off topic. A lot of pensions are gone, even through a lot of unions now.
That's true. Yeah.
Thank God mine still has one, if I could make it.
Well, it's because you're a Teamster, and Teamsters are the strongest union in the country. So he became the youngest vice president of the union in 1952. He was in his early 40s. So unions are very interesting in how they're structured, especially the Teamsters, because it's very influenced by the mafia. The mafia has actually run a lot of labor unions, especially in New York, for years and years.
And that's okay. You know why?
Why?
Because even though somehow they probably got their cut, but they made sure they took care of us.
Yeah.
So you got to take care of your workers or your union won't have any workers.
Exactly. And I feel like even your union to this day has some interesting connections. Well, but I'll just say that. We'll keep it at that.
I believe right now Jimmy Hoffa's son is the president of the Teamsters.
He is, yeah. He's still the president.
Yo, big up, young Hoffa.
So Jimmy became the president in 1957 and was now heavily focused on getting rid of rebels. This was his, mindset. There were a lot of shady things happening in the union. Tons of extortion. Strong-arming businesses and corporations. That's what unions do, and especially the Teamsters. They do that a lot. And once you're in a union like this, loyalty is expected. Like, you are loyal to your union, and that's kind of, especially back in the 50s, it was a huge expectation, and it was a big expectation of Jimmy. So anyone that went against the union, spoke against the union, he was after you because you're considered a rebel in his eyes.
Wow, you know why, too? Like, my grandfather, he was in the plumbers union, and till the day he died, he's in the hospital, and he was retired, and he was like, that's right, my union took care of me.
Yeah.
Which is true because you worked, and now, they took care of all your medical bills and you got your pension.
It's true, yeah.
It is a cycle. It's almost like Social Security where, the younger generation is paying for the older generation. You just keep that cycle going.
Yeah.
And it's a good system because this way you don't have to work until you're dead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just live to like 65 and hopefully I can make it.
So Russell tells Jimmy about this truck driver who is already a teamster named Frank. And he tells him they've been friends for a while and he'd be really good muscle for your operation, getting rid of these rebels. So Jimmy calls Frank, and the first thing he says to him on the phone, he says, "Hey, Frank, I heard you paint houses." And Frank says, "Yes, I do. I do my own carpentry too." Which, if you think hard about it, you know what that means.
I don't.
I do my own carpentry means
it sounded gangster.
I get rid of the bodies.
Oh, shit.
I do my own cleanup. I make it all okay. So this was the moment Frank now starts working for both Russell Bufalino and Jimmy Hoffa. And it becomes like this is his life now. You know, he's already a teamster. He's driving his truck. He does jobs for Russell. He does jobs for Jimmy. He keeps them both happy. And he becomes really good friends with them. It's not like he's just working for them. They become super close. And they travel together, like Frank and his wife and Russell and his wife. They go on trips together and they become really good friends. So after a few years of working for both of them, doing a lot of dirty deeds, the FBI arrests Frank and charges him with labor racketeering and sentences him to 30 years, which is insane for a racketeering charge. They just sentenced him to like the highest sentence you can get.
That's what happened with like the RICO charge or something. That's why like the mafia kind of died because the consequences were crazy. You get caught for one little thing. I don't necessarily know what the RICO charges are. Mm-hmm. You know, Russ, the researcher, can get on that at another time.
Yeah.
But you're doing like...
a lot of time.
Basically, you're doing numbers that if you get out, you're walking out of jail in a walker.
Yeah. And that's what they were trying to do. And the FBI strategically did this to Frank so that he would talk.
Fuck them,
and
bro.
And give them information.
They're just trying to set up a nice union so people could make a living wage.
Russell. He was trying to do good things for the union. Frank was a big union advocate. He was a big union guy. He loved his union. But he was also killing people for Russell and killing people for Jimmy and doing some bad things.
It depends on if you deserved it or not, whether I feel it's warranted.
Well, the FBI strategically did this, and they wanted Frank to give them information. But of course, Frank didn't talk. But he ended up serving 13 years in prison.
Oh, shit.
He was in there for a long time.
You know, you can't be a rat.
No, he's not a rat.
You know who hated rats?
Who?
Big Ange.
Yes, she did.
Yup, because she'll call you out. You know what she'll say?
What will she say?
You're a rat.
That's a perfect impression of her. R.I.P. Okay.
Legend.
So Jimmy Hoffa was also arrested and put in jail in 1967. And while he was in jail, a new president takes over the Teamsters Union, and his name was Frank Fitzsimmons. Up until this point, there was a working relationship between the mafia and Jimmy Hoffa. Jimmy still held all the power and called all the shots for the union, but he did a lot of deals with the mafia and gave them a lot of money. So while he was gone, this new president completely lost control of the union, and the mafia took the union over, which is really bad, you know?
Well, is it?
Yes, it's bad. The mafia took control from Jimmy. Jimmy was all about his union.
Oh, so Jimmy wasn't mafia?
No, he was the union president. But he worked with the mafia. They had a working relationship. So he paid them money. They took care of each other. It was kind of like this mutually beneficial situation. But then Jimmy Hoffa goes to jail. And then while he's in jail, this guy Fitzsimmons takes over. And the mafia completely takes over the union. And this guy loses control.
Oh, yeah, because if the relationship is beneficial for both people and you have to pay someone to make money, that's okay because you get a return on your investment.
Exactly.
But if someone's taking advantage of you and you just let them take it, yeah, because you don't want them in charge of the pension funds and all that, because who knows where the money's going.
And that's what happened. So Jimmy gets out of jail and he comes back into power, and he is pissed at how much control the mafia now has over the union. So he tries to regain control of his union, but the mob is not having it. And they told him to not become president again, leave this guy Frank as president, and everything will be okay.
He wasn't having it.
No, of course. So Russell told Frank to tell Jimmy he better listen, because Frank and Jimmy, they're friends. They're both union guys. They're friends. And Russell is friends with Frank. So he says, you better tell your boy Jimmy he better listen, or you know what'll happen. And Jimmy responded and said they wouldn't dare.
He has some big balls.
Which is a mistake. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone know Hoffa's disappeared.
Yeah. So keep in mind this whole time that Frank and Jimmy were close friends, and that Frank had immense respect for Jimmy Hoffa. They worked together hand in hand in the union, and they had a really strong conviction to provide for the American working man. Like, they both had that in common. So now the controversial part of the story, here we are. According to Frank Sheeran, which he admitted to this like a few years before he died, Frank states that he was ordered to kill Hoffa. Frank and Russell were actually in Detroit for a family event, okay? Like a wedding or baby shower or something. And
I don't go to baby showers, by the way.
You don't.
You know what? I understand the first baby shower, but after the second one, I'm not supporting your habit.
Well, they were both in Detroit at this time, and this is a fact. Even the FBI says, like, Frank was in Detroit at the time of Jimmy Hoffa's death because they were at an event.
So Frank said he killed him. That's what's going on. That's where we're going.
So according to Frank, he and two other mob associates picked Jimmy Hoffa up at the Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield, Michigan, and they drove him to a house that Jimmy thought he was meeting Russell Buffalino to discuss the union, right? When they get to the house, only Jimmy and Frank walk in the house, and it's empty. No one else is there. So Jimmy gets a bad feeling, and he turns around and he says, Frank, let's get out of here. Something's going on. And as soon as he says that, Frank pulls out a gun and shoots him and kills him.
Allegedly.
This is according to Frank.
This is what's in the movie.
This is what's in the movie, yes.
Yeah, but a lot of people say this is false.
I understand, but I'm just telling you what he says. So Frank then drags Jimmy's body down the hallway, and the two other guys that they drove with come in, they wrap the body in a bag and carry it out the back door. They load it in the trunk of the car, and then the body is later set on fire. Now, I'm sorry, but this seems plausible to me. He was a close friend. Jimmy trusted him. He was in Detroit at the time of the murder. I think it's a plausible thing.
Why is he telling the story that he did it?
He told it before he died. Like, it was like a deathbed confession, but not quite deathbed. It was like a couple months before he died.
Who else has confessed to this?
14 other people, but I'm going to get into that later. So 6 weeks after the crime, Frank was indicted along with other mobsters for this missing persons case, because his body has still to this day never been found, but he was reported missing. So Frank and 5 other mobsters were indicted, but Frank pled the fifth. He didn't confess at all to this murder at the time, and they didn't have enough to charge him, so the charges were dropped. He didn't confess to this, like I said, until almost the end of his life. But, there are a lot of people who believe that this is a false confession, that Frank Sheeran didn't actually kill Jimmy Hoffa, and that this is kind of a money grab for the author of the book, Charles Brandt, and for Frank to give to his family. Because Charles Brandt made a lot of money off this book back in 2004 when it came out.
Dude, I would write a book like this if I could get a lot of money.
Yeah, it was
not get shot.
It was a New York Times bestseller, and then it was made into the movie The Irishman that's on Netflix right now, directed by Martin Scorsese. So they made a lot of money off of this. So a lot of people believe that this is a money grab when he confessed this crime.
Well, it wasn't a money grab for him because he was just kind of dead already.
Yeah, but for his family, for his daughters. So 14 other mobsters have confessed to the Jimmy Hoffa murder, including Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman. So it's hard.
Let me ask you this, though.
What?
What is the prestige of taking out Jimmy Hoffa?
If you do any research about the mafia, they love to confess to murders. Their whole shtick is being a tough guy, and
no, that is a thing.
They love bragging about it.
One of the number one things I heard in this neighborhood many times from guys that pretend to be in the mafia is, you don't know who I am?
Yeah, exactly. They love to say that.
And my favorite thing to say is, no, tell me. It's a legitimate question.
No, I know.
Because if I don't, and then what is their answer? Then they lose. They're like, because those are the clowns.
No, but then they don't do that. They threaten to kill you because they don't know what to say. I've heard you say that to people.
They're like,
before.
no, tell me. And I'm just the bartender. Like, tell me.
Well,
because a real mafia dude wouldn't have been in these clown ass bars I was working in with fishbowl drinks.
no, that's true. Yeah, but I've personally met a real mafia dude, and he was not very nice, and he was very threatening towards me. I will say no more. But they do love to show how powerful they are. And they love to brag about things they've done. And 14 of these guys have confessed to this murder because Jimmy Hoffa was the president of the Teamsters. It's a big, huge deal.
But
and
the bosses don't do that. That's like the dudes that are up and coming. There's always a clown, even in your friends group, that want to be like, look at me, look at me, look at me. Like,
yeah.
If you're really about it and you're making money and you're doing well, you're not like that.
Well,
and that's why a lot of dudes didn't like John Gotti. He was very flashy.
Yeah. No, that's true. But 14 mobsters that confess to this murder aren't necessarily bosses. They're like just guys.
Henchmen.
Yeah.
That's a term I learned from Carmen Sandiego.
Yeah. So Sammy the Bull and Michael Francis, like I said, both say that this mob hit did happen. It was a mob hit. They say 100% the mob killed Jimmy Hoffa.
Of course.
But it wasn't Frank who did it.
Who do they say?
They don't say who did it. I watched interviews with both of them about this, and both of them won't say who did it, but they just say it was mob hit, but they won't say who it was.
I've been listening to the Sammy the Bull podcast. It's really good. I think it's called This Is Our Thing.
Yeah.
Listen to that and hit them up and say, go on Wife of Crime podcast. They're from the Bronx.
Imagine having Sammy the Bull on our podcast. I would honestly be very intimidated. I wouldn't even know what to say.
Nah, it would be good. I don't know what I would say, but he's old. So
he is old.
But he's gangsta. It was him and Michael Frances on some...
Francis.
Frances, that's like a pasta dish.
The chicken dish. Chicken Frances.
Well, he's a chicken now. Mr. Jesus.
He is, yeah.
Lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
So why then, though? Like, why confess to killing one of your closest friends? Why would Frank confess to this all these years later? Like, sometimes the most simple explanation is actually the truth. So Frank says he had to kill him or Frank would be killed. This is how this world works. If you get ordered to kill somebody, you're getting killed if you don't go through with it. It's not like they're like, oh, you don't want to? No problem. We'll find someone else who will. Like, it doesn't work like that. So, in my opinion...
Like, that's not on my job description.
But it was. He was a hitman. So, like, he couldn't have done that. So, if Russell, Russell Buffalino ordered him to kill Jimmy Hoffa, in Russell's eyes, Frank's loyalty to him was the most important thing. From Russell's point of view, Frank is loyal to me. I introduced him to Jimmy. He needs to do whatever I tell him to do. And if I tell him to do this, he's got to do it. So I just don't understand why he would confess to something he didn't do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
all these years later.
I don't know how many other guys you said, I forgot, but there's 14 other guys that are confessing to something they didn't do. So 15 people confessed, counting, what's Frank? So probably 14 of them are lying, or possibly 15.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we'll never know. I don't think this crime will ever be solved.
I'm going to ask my guy.
Okay, ask your guy. But I don't think this crime will ever be solved. So Frank Sheeran, for the rest of his life, he was in and out of prison a few more times. He was indicted multiple times for the remainder of his life. After Jimmy's death, Frank's daughter, Peggy, this is very interesting. So after Jimmy Hoffa died, Frank's daughter, Peggy, completely stopped talking to him and never spoke to him again for the rest of his life because Peggy was convinced that her father killed Jimmy, who was her father's best friend, which I think she looked at that as like some scumbag shit. Like, this is your best friend and you kill him? She never spoke to him again.
Wow. So she wasn't about that mafia life.
No.
She was about just like regular loyalty.
Yeah, she was just so interesting. Little side note about Peggy. When Peggy was a little girl, and this is actually in the movie The Irishman, and it's a true story. When Peggy was a little girl, she was at this corner store and she picked something up, and the owner, the dude working there, or no, she knocked something over or something, and the dude working there came from around the counter and like got in her face and yelled at her, and I think might have even gotten physical with her, like pushed her or something. And she was a little girl. She was only like 9 years old. So Frank went to the guy's shop, beat the shit out of this guy.
As he should.
Broke the windows.
As he should.
Completely destroyed the store.
Burn that motherfucker down.
But Peggy was terrified. I think she was like scared of her father, because even though in his eyes, he's defending his daughter's honor, like you don't fuck with my kids, you know what I mean? And he was defending her, but she was very scared by it. And I think she carried that for a while. And then after Jimmy died, she blamed her father for Jimmy's death and never spoke to him again.
I wonder if we could look a little more into their relationship, because that intrigues me.
Yeah.
Like, he was protecting you.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't do it just randomly because someone said something to you. Like,
yeah. It's interesting.
And it's funny because another child in that situation, if like probably her, if no one did anything to help her, like she might have said, why didn't my father defend me?
Yeah, it's true.
So it's like the grass is always greener.
It's so true. I mean, growing up, I had a dad that was very protective, and I was always thankful. But at the time as a little kid, I was afraid of my dad. But I also knew that literally no one could mess with me or my dad would kill them. Like I just was convinced. Like I looked at my dad as like the ultimate strong Superman guy. And now as a woman, I married someone who I feel the same way about. Like it influenced me in who I picked as a husband, because when I look at you as my protector. Like I know no one will ever fuck with me. And it's just interesting.
Well, I'm glad you feel safe.
I do. Oh.
I'm not like a crazy guy though.
You're not crazy. I'm just saying you would protect me.
Yeah, it's my job. That's what you sign up for when you get married. That's how I feel. But you know what? Respect to the dude. There's a lot of dudes out there that aren't fighters. Like I'm not even a fighter. I won't fight.
You're not a big fighter, but I know you would protect me if it came down to it.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do to protect your family.
Yeah, 100%. So in 2003, Frank the Irishman Sheeran died of cancer at the age of 83.
Well, you made it long.
And in 2004, his book, Charles Brandt's book, came out with the confession made by Frank. And this was the first time that this confession from Frank had come out into the public.
Wait a minute. Who else witnessed Frank say this confession?
I'm not sure. He had
Because if just the guy who wrote the book said it, this guy could be making that up for profit.
No, there were recordings and stuff.
Oh,
he had
okay.
he had audio recordings. He had a relationship with Frank for 5 years, and he recorded a lot of their conversations and stuff. So this has all been recorded. So that's the case of Frank the Irishman Sheeran and his account of the murder of Jimmy Hoffa. So what do you think? Do you think that Frank killed Jimmy Hoffa? Do you think it's a possibility, or do you think it was a money grab on the part of the author and Frank for his family?
Well, we'd have to look into the other 14 guys that said they did it.
Well, one of them is Richard Kuklinski, and he also claimed to have killed 200 and bazillion people. So I kind of don't believe him. So that's one marked off the list. There's 13 more.
Yeah, it's Richard Clowninski.
Clowninski.
Maybe we could do a whole podcast on what happened to Jimmy Hoffa.
Maybe. I don't know if we'll ever find answers because the FBI still can't figure it out.
Yeah,
it's
but
still a cold case with the FBI.
Yeah, but they got these classroom trained profilers.
True. You're a profiler who was schooled by the School of Hard Knocks.
And, I'm a teamster.
Yeah, you're a teamster. That's true.
So maybe we could, you know what? But I don't want to say too much because who knows who's lurking around.
True. Who knows who's listening? Very true.
I mean, now we got much more listeners. It used to just be us at a table. Now it's us and a bunch of people.
Exactly. So we got to be careful.
But we got a little close-knit community that we interact with. Feel free to reach out to us on Wife of Crime Pod on Instagram. We'll usually message you back. Jess is good at that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people really wanted to hear a mob story. A lot of our patrons, they voted for this. This is the third week that I've done a patron pick. So they voted for this. And then when I, was talking about it on Patreon, they kept saying mafia, mafia, mafia. So they really wanted to hear this. So if you guys have any theories about the death of Jimmy Hoffa, let us know. Send us a message. We'll talk about it on the next episode. But thank you guys so much for listening again, tuning back in for another episode. Check us out on Instagram at Wife of Crime Pod.
Hashtag don't hold your farts in, ladies. Hashtag let it rip. Sorry, fellas. You about to be Dutch ovens.
And check us out on Facebook at Wife of Crime, the Crime Family, and Patreon at Wife of Crime Pod. And yeah.
And you already know, guys, we got merch. We're terrible at telling people. We tell
it every week. We talk about our merch.
I think at the last 3 seconds, buy merch, bye.
That's true.
Check it out. There's a lot of fresh people out there with our merch.
There is, yep.
And a lot of you people are not looking good because you don't have it.
All right. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Bye.
Peace.